tell them how I thought they should do things, as you do when you come from the colonies. And then they said, well, why don't you come and work with us for a year? So 6 months into my stint, I met the man of my dreams, a lovely Swiss man. And so I don't know if it's the love of the sewing machine or him, and it's now 22 years later. So I'm still at the factory. It still does exist. A lot of people don't believe that Berninas are actually made in Switzerland, but this particular model is. And if you're actually wondering, we also have a plant in Thailand, in Chiang Mai, and we've had one for 30 years. We built it ourselves, and that's where we actually produce our other machines. So it's very similar. It's just the same as our factory that we have in Switzerland. So enough about that. I'd like to share with you a lot of interesting things about this wonderful new machine. I've been working on this product for the last few years in the factory. My job at the factory is I head the education department. So whenever you look at a how-to video on Bernina machines on YouTube, that's come from my department, and I do a lot of the training worldwide. So it's a very interesting job. I get to meet all of you wonderful people all around the world, and it's, as I sometimes say, I have to pinch myself that I actually have this as a job. They pay me to do all the things I did badly at school. Talking to people, being disruptive, all those kind of things. So I work in the factory, so we do the education, and how it works when we develop a sewing machine is that we listen to all of you. That's why you come to these events. So I listen, and we take all the things that you want to have on a sewing machine. We go back to the engineers and say, look, we need you to develop a machine for this, 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 and this. And they get to work, and then we go through and we do an awful lot of testing. So we're testing that it's really going to do what we need it to do for our customers. So that's an important part of the job. The machine itself, we developed it primarily for the quilting market, of course, because a lot of people are moving from doing their quilting free motion wise, but they're going into the embroidery side of things. So it means you've now got a fabulous new, very large hoop you see here, and so it means that you can do a 12-inch block when you're doing quilting in the hoop. But first of all, I'd like to show you basically the presentation's in two parts. We have the sewing side, and then we have the embroidery side. So with the sewing, one of the major things we have, the fact is that we have an integrated stitch regulator in the machine. So it's called BISR. We couldn't say BSR or IBSR because we have irritable system. So just so you know. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to have it so it's underneath the machines like our Q series. Anyone have a Q series machine? Wonderful machine, yes. So we've been able to bring our technology from the Q series and bring it into our domestic machines. As we took the domestic features and we actually put them into our long arm, so we'd be able to combine some of the different things together. So I'd like to show you just how easy that is. So make sure I'm not in the way. So I've got the machine set up, and I'm going to go into sewing mode. Now, all it takes to be able to do the BISR is to attach a stitch plate, a special stitch plate, because the actual sensor for the BISR is underneath here in the bobbin area. So some of you who already has a Bernina machine, and you probably have a very nice, but I see there's still a few that could do with a new one, hopefully. I don't want to be preaching to the converted. So we have the bobbin thread sensor here, and that's also where the BISR is. So I'll point to it here underneath. So you've got to make sure your door's shut. How many of you leave your door open and you wonder why the machine keeps stopping? And it's because the sensor is not working. So there you go. So it's underneath here, and then all I do is then go to the machine, and I'm going to the screen, I'm going to select the BISR, and now the machine is it's coming up with BISR on the machine, on the screen, and it's got straight stitch or zigzag, and I have 3 different modes. So I have BSR 1, 2, and 3. Now, for those of you who are interested, BISR 1 is more for when you're doing stippling and continuous work, and number 2 is good for ruler work, and number 3 is actually basting stitches. So when you're wanting to baste your quilt together, you've got this basting. Another nice thing to note too is you've got a kickstart right at the bottom of the screen. It means you can program your foot control to actually start your free motion stitching, which is really good. You don't have to actually use the start stop button or the keep your foot on the foot pedal. You just turn it on to start it and then turn it off using the foot pedal. Okay, so now I've got, if you're wondering which feet work with the BISR, it's actually all our free motion quilting feet. And I've got a foot here. This is our ruler work foot, because this is probably the main reason why people want to have the integrated stitch regulator, is because they like to do ruler work. And with our old BSR foot, you weren't able to do a 365-degree with the actual foot. So I'm going to put this onto the machine and show you quickly. By the way, you are allowed to ask questions. I don't bite. So I've got the machine set up now with foot number 72, and I've got some fabric here, and I'm just going to show you. I think you all know if you're going to do ruler work, you need to use a 6mm ruler, which I've got here. And the other thing to keep in mind too is you always bring your foot down before you actually position your ruler. Now this is important because machines don't like it when the feet go down on the rulers. If anyone's ever done this, you do it once. Okay, so I've got so I'm bringing down, and then what I can do is just position my fabric, and because I don't have a foot anymore, it means not only can I do just straight stitch in a row, it means I can also this is like those the guys that actually play several different instruments. Here I am, I'm talking to you, I'm holding the ruler and I'm stitching at the same time. So if I don't speak for a moment, I'm just concentrating, so I do it nice and straight. But the nice thing here is not only can sew straight, but I can now go 365 degrees, so I can actually do things from behind. So I've got the full flexibility with my rulers when I'm working, which is really good. So I urge you to really come and have a look at the new stitch regulator, and just see how beautiful and easy it works. And for those of you who haven't had a stitch regulator on your machine, it really does keep the stitch length regulated, also for standard stitching, but also for miniatures. So just imagine if you're doing a miniature quilt, or you want to do tiny stippling, you don't even have to think about it because it will regulate it for you. So that's just a little bit about that. Now, of course, I could talk for ages on all the wonderful new things that are on this machine, so I'm just going to remove this fabric out of the way. Now, the next thing is our jumbo stitches. So I know that you probably don't purchase a machine just for the decorative stitches, but now we are able to sew most of the stitches on the machine up to 500% larger. So this means you can take some of the stitches that are kind of like a nice quilt design, you can actually bring them into embroidery and then stitch them out as an edge-to-edge quilting design. So it gives you a lot more flexibility. So I'll show you just an example of that. I'm going to choose from one of my decorative stitches. You can see here there's so many stitches, beautiful stitches on the machine. So this is quite a cute stitch, and normally it would sew quite small. So you can see it's quite limited, and you don't really see this. Of course, you want to be able to see how nice and large it's going to turn out. So I'm going to take it, and I'm going to go to jumbo stitching, and I'm going to increase the size. Now, what you might not have just noticed there, that all our icons now have titles on this machine. So there's no chance of getting lost anymore because you know exactly what every icon means. So back to jumbo stitch, I'm going up to 500%. So you can see now that that stitch is nice and large. I could stitch this out, but I could also take it in to embroidery and have it embroidered out in the embroidery hoop. So there's different ways of doing things. It's just really depends on what you're doing. Okay, so if you're ever getting lost on this machine, it's very easy to find where you're going because we have a help center. Now this is our area where you go if you want to learn more about the machine, or a lot of people are interested in finding something in the manual. We have a printed manual, but then you can also go to the instruction manual, which is online. So we've got it here in the machine, and you can actually type in the search function what you're looking for. But another nice advantage is to actually choose something you want to know more about, and then you can actually use the Wi-Fi to actually put it onto your tablet or your phone. So it means you can have your instructions on your device, and then you can keep sewing because you can look at the ones on your device. So this is a really good feature for those of you who are learning new techniques. Another thing I'd like to show you is with this help center is you're able to go to what we call the consultant, and you're able to choose a technique you're working on, and the machine will help you set it up. So, for example, I've got applique selected. I can choose the fabric I want to use. Maybe I want to do some applique with denim. And it tells me not only what the machine will automatically set up for me, but some of the things I need to do. And when I've got it set up, I just select the green check mark, and then on the machine it shows me exactly what foot I should be selecting, and also the stitch is ready to go. So this is taking the guesswork out of what I want to work on. The machine has also a lot of animations, so it will help you work through each stage, and I'm going to show you that now because I'm going to go into the embroidery part of sewing. And I've got the hoop. The giant hoop here is, like I said before, it enables you to do a 12-inch block. So you can see it's nice and large for the 12-inch block, but it also gives you the opportunity to do wonderful projects. So not just garment sewing like what I have got here with this floral design, but you could actually put these designs on quilts. There's some beautiful things already in the machine that you could embroider. So I'm now going to put this onto the machine. So we're able, with this new technology, to use a camera built into the machine to actually scan this area. So what you could be doing is you've got your quilt ready to be quilted, so you can actually pop it into the to the embroidery hoop here, and then approximately where it needs to be, and then you can go in and you can choose a design and place it onto your quilt, and then the machine will stitch it out for you. So for those of you that aren't confident free motion stitches, this is a really good solution, and it gives you that accuracy that you're probably looking for. And how many of you pay people to do your quilting? Yeah, some of you, you're a little bit shy about putting your hands up, but this is a really good way of doing your own quilts. And then once you finish one block, then you can actually unhoop the top hoop, and you can move the quilt along and then do the next stage. So this is a very convenient way, and I know this because I was involved in the quilt that is in our advertising material for the 990, and it made it very easy using this system. So I've already scanned in my design, so you now see it up on the screen. It's exactly what's in my hoop here, and now I can start adding designs to this. So not only can I see the scan, but I can also put a color. So for example, when I was doing my shirt, my blouse here, I actually had the blue in the background, so I could place my design and then decide what colors I was going to work with. So I'm now going to add an embroidery design. I've got a wonderful collection of BQM files. So they're the Bernina quilt designs. So they hold the stitch per inch. You know about stitch per inch from quilts? Yeah. So what it means is that they adjust the stitch per inch depending on the size. So they're very clever designs, and they make it very flexible when you're planning your own quilt patterns. Okay, so now I've got my hoop set up, and I'm just going to go and choose a design. So I'm just going to go to my embroidery design folders, and I am going to select a design that's from our quilt, and I'm going to continue with my little leaf design. You'll see here, I'm going to move it just off the hoop area so you can see what it looks like. So I'm here. Now, maybe I'd like to change the color of this design. I can easily just go into my colors, and I'm going to select another color so it's easier for you to see on the screen. I'm going to make it yellow. So you can, if you have a particular brand of thread that you like using, you're also able to take an embroidery design and choose your brand. So I can automatically change. I can select, I'll go and show you that actually because it's quite interesting. So at the bottom of the screen here it says change brand. So I can go from maybe Metla to Madeira to Aurifil or whatever brand I'm using, and it will convert my embroidery design to my favorite threads, which is quite handy. Okay, so I've got my design, and now I've got to make it fit in I'm going to put it in my light blue panel there, and I can do this several ways. I can actually just use my finger on the screen, as you are all very used to doing with your phones, and I can actually go in and I can just scroll and just fine tune, and by going into the actual resizing, then I can actually go in and make it fit perfectly. So once I've got it kind of where I want it to be, I'm also going to move it up a little bit, and I can really go and get it so it's perfectly in the right position. Now, if I'm not quite sure if that's correct, I've got a laser. Now, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see the laser, but there's a laser point. So it means that on my fabric, then I can go in and I can really check that I've got it perfectly positioned on my quilt. So I'm going to go now, and I'm going to use what we call pinpoint placement. And this is where we can actually now go. I don't know how many of you have made a block, and it's not 100% square. And it means that you can actually fine-tune. We're going to use our morphing to fine-tune our little design here, and it's going to fit perfectly. So we're going to take our design. Actually, I'm going to move it now. I know what's this. Right, so I'm just going to go into pinpoint placement now, and I'm going to move my design so it's exactly where I want it to be. So I'm just fine-tuning, and I'm looking at my fabric on the screen. I'm actually using my screen, and I'm also looking at the laser on the fabric to make sure that it's looking exactly how I want. Another nice thing too, if you understand, there's always the start and the end of a design. So what you're also able to do is you're able to change the start and the end, because often you want to do a whole continuous design on your block. You're able to do this very easily. And what you can also do is I could actually go and I can duplicate this design, and I can match up the start and the ends so they are one continuous design. So you'll find that very useful when you're building a whole block filled with different designs. Another thing I really like, it's one of my favorite new things, is there's a lock feature. I don't know how many of you have been quilting and you move your, accidentally move the screen by touching, the quilt touches the screen and it moves. So this is a lock feature. It locks the design in place so it's not going to move. So then I can go to the next design and then plan it and then lock everything in place so it's ready to go and stitch out. So I'm sure you want to see it actually stitch out, so I'm going to show you now. So of course, when we go now to stitching out, we have a new screen, and it's called the Stitch Out Summary. Now, I don't know how many of you are embroiderers and you've had the situation where you can't remember if you've set up the thread away, or if you have the securing on or off. There's lots of different little features that embroiderers like to use. So now it's all on one screen at the end, just to do a quick check that you've got everything set up. So for example, I haven't got the right foot set up, so I can now go and select foot number 26, which I'm going to use. I've got my quilt settings that are on, and I can also tell it if I want some basting around my area, or I also could say, well, I'm actually working with a thick batting, so I can put that in there, and then it will take me to our sewing out screen. And I've just got a single color here, but if it was a multicolor, I can easily move between colors. I can actually go in here. I can go a bit faster if I want, or if, for example, the thread breaks, I can actually go back and track back to where my thread broke and continue. So when I'm ready to go, I'm going to, as all good quilters should, if they're not securing their threads, as I'm bringing up the bobbin thread. And off we go. So this is where you need to keep your old machine. So you can be doing your piecing on the old machine, and this will be doing all your quilting. Okay. So there we go. Ta-da! Now, I think that's pretty cool, don't you think? Yes. Oh, we got a little clap. Thank you. That's very good. So you can be, precision is the name of the game. I mean, Swiss can't help themselves. They have to be precise. And they don't put anything out on the market. It's really got to be good. And we've put a lot of work into getting this machine really as precise as possible. And there's so many different editing features on the machine to really help you actually improve your own sewing skills. This is an example of using quilt designs in behind this embroidery. So you can use the BQM files, put them all together and have it as your background, and then you can embroider over the top. And this is the same design that I've got featured on my shirt. I wanted to test, I know that it can sew through heavy duty things, but I wanted to try something really delicate. So I wanted to try and test on some silk organza, just for a little challenge, as you do. And it did a beautiful job. So I really was able to get a nice job. My tip is, when you're doing something on a sheer fabric, always use the same color thread, top and bottom. So I did have to prepare a little bit and make sure I had the same threads. But I was very happy with the quality there. So, and this is the same. This is a cushion. I've got friends who they don't have time sometimes to buy gifts for their friends, so they embroider cushion covers and things, and it means so much to people when you've sewn them yourself. So it's a great way of recuperating the costs, maybe, when you've purchased a machine like this, is to make it pay for itself. So it is built in. Yeah, this is one of the designs built in, and we have a color wheel, so you're able to change the colors very easily and change it and to have a whole different look to match your decor in your own home. Question? Yes? I knew that question would come. I'm very pleased you asked that. It's really interesting because I heard of a technique from some friends of mine in Germany, and they said that they don't use stabilizer on some things because it bruises. I don't know if you've ever sewn velvet, embroidered velvet, you get this bruising. So I thought I'd try it out. No risk, no fun. So I didn't really have enough spare fabric if it went wrong, I would have had a midriff short shirt going on. But it did work. And I'll show you my trick, is that I get my fabric ready to hoop, so I hoop the large square before I stitch it. So I haven't actually stitched out. I haven't cut out the sleeve. And I use Thermolan because it's nice and stable. So Thermolan is for, I've got to stand back a bit because I know that where the speakers work. And then what I do is I hoop this on top. This is the exact replica of my big hoop. And I've drawn the template shape here. And I sit it on top, put the top hoop on the top here. I'm not doing a very good demonstration of this because I really need to do it on a flat space. But all you need to know is that basically when I lift this up, then I can do my embroidery, and this grips the fabric and keeps it in place so I can stitch out my design. And it worked perfectly. I didn't starch my fabric, I didn't do anything, and it stayed. So this is a really good trick because I didn't want to wash this. I didn't want to take the risk of washing before, just in case I didn't know how it was going to perform. You know, other people would have actually bought the piece and washed it and trialed it and tested it. I didn't do that, but it did work. So this is a good little tip if you are doing a lot of embroidery. Okay, I'll show you with the actual hoop. So normally, I've got my large hoop here, okay. So I don't want the fabric to bruise, so I want something on top of the fabric. So I put my fabric, and imagine this is my silk that I'm going to put in my hoop. Before I put the top on, then I take this is my kind of template, and I can use it over and over and over again. And I put this over my silk. Oh, I see. Yeah. I know there's some things there. So I put it here like this. The reason why I keep this here is because I can keep it rectangular and I keep it in the right position. And so once the two are ready to hoop, I put my top hoop on there, and then when I go to the machine to embroider, I peel that away so I've got my exposed area. If you want to know more, if you didn't quite understand, come up afterwards and I can show you because it's easier. A cushion, exactly. That's a very nice way of explaining it. It's a cushion between the hoop and the actual fabric. So if anything's really fine, that's a good way of doing that, where you don't want to, yeah. So are there any other questions? Because you can ask me all sorts of things about Bernina machines or, yep.
I have a question about when you're doing the lettering.
Yes.
When you type it in.
Yes.
Sometimes if you're doing capital L and capital A, you get a big space.
Yes.
Can you kern them so that
Yes.
they become individual letters?
Okay, so that's a good question. The question was regarding lettering. When you have lettering in all fonts, also in graphics programs, they have a bounding box. So a W or an M could be an example of one that's quite a big box. So when you're writing Mary, when you go to do the airy part, it seems to be a long way away because of the bounding box. So what I would recommend, depending on what machine you have, is that you actually do the M first and then do the Mary in a separate group, and then you can move them together. So this machine enables you to actually adjust the spacing. Yeah. So to give you a tip for the other machines, you just need to do it separately. But this one, the advantages of the lettering on this machine is you're able to change the font on the screen. So there's 24 different fonts, and you can actually select one, and then if you don't like the look of it, you can actually go in and edit the actual font and change it. Plus, you can adjust the spacing, and it's a very powerful lettering. You can almost, you can change the size of the lettering, quite large and quite small, and you're able to then adjust the density of the lettering, or whether it's a satin or whether it's a step stitch, because that's important too. Because as you get really large with satin stitching, it gets quite loopy because of the nature of the stitch. Other questions? Oh, it's so good that you're easy to please. It's £12,950 and a whole lot of fun and and hours of pleasure, I would say. Yes. Yes. Yes, yes, you can come. The question was regarding being able to upgrade your machine if you want to do stitch. You want the stitch regulator. Yep, you can do that. You can, if your machine is BSR ready, then you can actually purchase the BSR foot, and you're able to use it on your machine.
Can you scan on this like a string logo onto the machine?
We don't have that possibility to scan images into the machine. We work on the system of having a separate software, so you can use a separate software and you can use that because more people who get into that side of things want to go full on into the digitizing process. Yeah. I didn't even keep track of the time. So, well, I'd like to say thank you for joining me today. I wish you all the best with your sewing projects. And we've got some brochures if you're interested to take one away and have a wee read. There's lots of information online. There's lots of how-to videos if you want to see how things happen. And there will even be a customer simulator available. So you can actually download and play. And that's very cost-effective. But then I mean, it's like try before you buy, but it's actually on the computer. So the machine?
No, the simulator.
The simulator's coming, yeah. It's not far away, yeah. Yeah, so, sure.
Thank you.
Do you want to just hand? So all the best for the rest of the, one more day to go. So Max, it's, you can, I think it's just, that's a good question. I'm not sure if it's, you have to come to the stand. Yeah, it's only for Windows. I think you can still download the.
I can upgrade on that, but
Yeah.
anything else?
It's a good question. I'll have to find out about that.
Don't do anything for Max.
Yeah, no, we're